Imagine waking up one morning, scrolling through the news, and seeing the headline. Scientists have brought a dinosaur back to life. It sounds impossible, something straight out of a movie. But what if I told you that right now, in secret laboratories and icy vaults around the world, this isn't just an idea, it's a project already underway. Welcome to World's Echoes, where we explore the wonders, mysteries, and unspoken truths of our planet and beyond. If you're fascinated by the idea of science rewriting the past, make sure to subscribe, because today, we're diving into one of the most extraordinary stories in human history, the return of the dinosaurs. For millions of years, the Earth has existed without them. The mighty roar of a Tyrannosaurus rex has been silent for 66 million years. The skies once filled with the shadow of pterosaurs are now crossed only by aircraft and birds. Yet, humanity, driven by endless curiosity, has never stopped wondering, could we bring them back? It all began with a dream. When Jurassic Park hit theaters in 1993, it wasn't just a blockbuster, it was a prophecy of sorts. The idea that ancient DNA, preserved in amber, could be extracted and used to recreate lost species fascinated scientists and ordinary people alike. At the time, it was science fiction. Today, it's slowly becoming science fact. But here's the catch, the real story of bringing dinosaurs back doesn't begin with dinosaurs at all. It begins with something much smaller, a feather, frozen in time. In 2015, paleontologists in Myanmar discovered a tiny feathered tail trapped inside a piece of amber. It belonged not to a bird, but to a small dinosaur that lived about 99 million years ago. Inside that amber, scientists found fragments of soft tissue, even traces of blood. Suddenly, the impossible didn't feel so impossible anymore. Because blood means DNA. And DNA means life. Of course, this isn't as simple as just injecting dinosaur blood into an egg and waiting for a hatchling. DNA is fragile. It decays over time faster than most people realize. The half-life of DNA is only about 521 years, meaning after 6.8 million years, even the strongest strands would be unreadable. Dinosaurs went extinct 10 times longer ago than that. Their genetic blueprint, in theory, should be dust. So how can we possibly bring them back? Here's where things get fascinating. Scientists aren't just searching for complete dinosaur DNA, they're trying to rebuild it. Piece by piece. Like a puzzle with billions of missing fragments, researchers are studying the DNA of birds, the direct descendants of dinosaurs, and comparing it with that of ancient fossilized remains. Birds, after all, are living dinosaurs in disguise. Every chicken, pigeon, and crow you see today is part of that ancient bloodline. One geneticist, Dr. Jack Horner, who actually inspired the character of Dr. Alan Grant in Jurassic Park, has spent years trying to reverse engineer a chicken to make it more dinosaur-like. He called it the Chickenosaurus Project. The idea was to switch on ancient genes still buried deep within a bird's DNA, genes that once made tails longer, teeth sharper, and claws more ferocious. Imagine a chicken, but with a reptilian snout, a long tail, and clawed wings. It sounds absurd, but in the lab, they've already managed to modify chicken embryos to grow dinosaur-like snouts and altered tails. It's not fantasy anymore, it's evolution in reverse. And that's where the line between science fiction and reality begins to blur. Because the same technologies that could bring back extinct mammoths or saber-toothed cats, could, theoretically, be used to resurrect creatures far older. At the heart of this revolution is CRISPR-Cas9, a gene editing tool so precise it can rewrite the very code of life. CRISPR works like a pair of molecular scissors, cutting DNA strands and inserting new sequences wherever scientists choose. It's already being used to cure genetic diseases, modify crops, and even fight viruses. But in the hands of the right, or wrong, people, it could do something else entirely: revive what evolution erased. Across the world, de-extinction projects are already in motion. The most famous is the effort to bring back the woolly mammoth. Scientists at Colossal Biosciences are combining frozen mammoth DNA found in Siberian ice with that of modern Asian elephants. Their goal isn't to clone a mammoth, but to create a hybrid, an elephant with mammoth traits, resistant to cold and capable of surviving in the Arctic. They plan to release these creatures back into the tundra, where mammoths once roamed freely. But here's the shocking part: the technology being developed for mammoths doesn't stop there. Once perfected, the same methods could be applied to any extinct creature, provided there's enough genetic information left to work with. And while we may never find a perfectly preserved T-Rex, we have found something perhaps even more valuable: traces of their genetic fingerprints in living birds. That means we might not have to find dinosaurs, we can rebuild them. But as with all human ambition, the question isn't just can we, it's should we? Because reviving a creature that once ruled the earth isn't just about curiosity, it's about control. Dinosaurs evolved for a world very different from ours. The air composition, gravity, vegetation, and ecosystems were entirely alien compared to today's planet. If one were to somehow survive, would it thrive, or would it destroy everything around it? Picture a predator like the velociraptor, fast, intelligent, deadly. Now imagine it in the wild today. How long before it escapes containment? How long before curiosity turns into catastrophe? Even scientists involved in these genetic projects tread carefully. Many of them believe that bringing dinosaurs back would cross a moral and ecological line humanity isn't ready for. Others argue that if we caused extinctions through climate change and deforestation, maybe de-extinction is our chance to make things right, a way to restore what we've lost. The debate is fierce. But behind closed doors, in state-of-the-art labs funded by private investors and biotech giants, the experiments continue. Frozen DNA samples, synthetic genomes, gene editing, the ingredients for life are being assembled like never before. And it's not just mammoths anymore. Rumors have surfaced about attempts to recreate ancient reptiles, starting small, with creatures that share DNA links to dinosaurs, like crocodiles and lizards, before moving toward birds and prehistoric species that blurred the line between avian and reptilian evolution. If these tests succeed, dinosaurs might not return as perfect replicas of the past, but as new hybrids, part ancient, part modern. Creatures born not from nature, but from our imagination. And that's where the story begins to feel less like history, and more like prophecy. We stand on the edge of a scientific revolution, one that could reshape the balance of life on Earth. The same drive that once took us to the moon is now pushing us into the past. But when science dares to rewrite nature, nature often writes back. And soon, we might hear echoes of an ancient roar, not in a movie theater, but in real life. In a hidden laboratory, deep in the heart of Boston, scientists stare through microscopes at strands of DNA so old they could tell stories from another world. Under glowing blue light, fragments of prehistoric code flicker on a computer screen, data once carried in the blood of creatures that ruled the earth before a single human ever walked it. This isn't a movie set. It's real science. The company leading this frontier is Colossal Biosciences, a biotechnology firm backed by Silicon Valley billionaires and some of the world's top geneticists. Their mission is bold: to use gene editing to bring extinct animals back to life. Officially, their first goal is to restore the woolly mammoth, but behind closed doors, the implications go much further. Because when you can edit the genome of an elephant to create a mammoth, what stops you from editing a bird to create a dinosaur? The process begins not with bones or fossils, but with data. Scientists extract whatever fragments of DNA they can find, sometimes from frozen tissue, sometimes from fossils encased in amber or stone. Using supercomputers, they compare those fragments to the DNA of living relatives. Then, bit by bit, they fill in the gaps. It's like rewriting a lost symphony where only a few notes remain. You can't hear the whole song yet, but you can feel it returning. One researcher described it perfectly: we're not resurrecting the past. We're reconstructing it. CRISPR-Cas9 is their brush, and evolution is their canvas. By splicing ancient genes into modern ones, they can create creatures that look, behave, and even sound like long-extinct species. A feather here. A claw there. A tail that shouldn't exist anymore, growing again. And the deeper you go into this research, the more eerie it becomes. In 2020, a team of scientists managed to insert dinosaur-like protein sequences into chicken cells. These proteins formed structures nearly identical to those found in certain extinct species. That same year, another team succeeded in modifying the beak of a chicken embryo to resemble a snout, just like its ancient ancestors. Step by step, the boundaries between past and present are blurring. But science, as always, moves faster than ethics. If we truly could bring back a dinosaur, should we? Imagine this for a second. A private lab announces the birth of the first genetically reconstructed dinosaur, a small, feathered creature no larger than a dog. Cameras flash. Scientists smile. The world cheers. But as days turn into weeks, strange things begin to happen. The creature's metabolism is unpredictable. It grows faster than expected. Its behavior shifts in ways no one foresaw. And suddenly, the same excitement that once filled the air turns into quiet fear. That's the question haunting de-extinction research, not whether it can be done, but whether we're ready for what comes next. Nature is balance. Every species that lives today exists because it fits into a delicate web of ecosystems. Dinosaurs ruled their own world, a world of thicker air, different gravity, and no humans. Bringing them here isn't just reviving an animal, it's tearing open a hole in evolution's timeline. Even the mildest predator from that era could disrupt modern ecosystems in ways we can't control. Diseases that haven't existed for millions of years could resurface. Bacteria hidden in fossilized tissue could evolve the moment they touch modern biology. It's a Pandora's box that science is quietly prying open. And yet, we can't help ourselves. Because the dream of seeing a dinosaur alive, of standing face to face with something that time itself forgot, is one of the most irresistible ideas humanity has ever had. There are whispers that certain labs, under the guise of avian evolution studies, are already experimenting with more complex genetic combinations using bird DNA as a base, but inserting synthetic sequences modeled on ancient reptilian genomes. The goal isn't to perfectly clone a dinosaur, but to recreate the traits that define them: size, muscle density, and even primitive instincts encoded deep in the brain. One unnamed researcher from a genetics conference in Singapore described these creatures as bioreconstructions. They wouldn't be exact replicas of the past, but something new. Something that's almost a dinosaur, but not quite. If that sounds unbelievable, remember this: less than a century ago, cloning itself was pure fantasy. Then came Dolly the sheep, a living, breathing clone of an adult organism. From that moment on, the door to life's blueprint was open, and no one could close it again. And now, with AI-driven genome prediction and precision gene editing, the process has accelerated faster than anyone expected. A computer can model what an extinct species' DNA should look like even if the real sample is incomplete. That means the dinosaurs of the future might not be the same ones that once walked the earth, but new creations designed by us. It raises a haunting question, and this is the one I want you to answer in the comments. If science could bring back a dinosaur today, would you want it to? Because the truth is, we might not get to vote on it. While public opinion debates the ethics, the private biotech world moves forward quietly, methodically. In parts of Asia, Europe, and the US, millions of dollars are being poured into what's called synthetic resurrection. That means scientists aren't cloning extinct species, they're reprogramming living ones to match ancient DNA profiles. In one Chinese facility, researchers have reportedly produced embryos combining modern bird DNA with genetic code sequences resembling those of the Archaeopteryx, the first known bird-dinosaur hybrid. It didn't survive long, but it did exist. For a few brief hours, something that had been gone for 150 million years lived again. And the world didn't even notice. That's the most chilling part, how quietly history can change. Every great leap in science begins with small steps no one pays attention to. The first test tube baby. The first cloned mammal. The first lab-grown organ. Each one sounded impossible until it was normal. And one day soon, the first reconstructed dinosaur embryo might sound just as ordinary. But what happens after that? Would we build sanctuaries for them, vast nature reserves where they roam freely under watchful eyes? Or would we display them in zoos, turning ancient life into tourist attractions? Maybe even weaponize them, as strange as that sounds, to study their resilience or biology for military advantage. History tells us one thing: when humans discover new power, we rarely use it gently. Still, not all scientists are alarmed. Some believe the return of prehistoric species could help heal the planet. Mammoths, for instance, could help restore Arctic grasslands in slow climate change by compacting snow and reflecting sunlight. If dinosaurs were reintroduced in controlled ecosystems, perhaps they could fill empty ecological roles, helping rebalance damaged habitats. It's a beautiful idea until you remember that dinosaurs were never meant for this world. Their lungs, their hearts, their entire biology was designed for a planet utterly different from ours. Earth today has thinner air, cooler temperatures, and new diseases. To survive, a resurrected dinosaur would have to be genetically modified, part ancient, part modern, engineered to live in an alien future. So even if we bring them back, they won't truly be the dinosaurs that once ruled the Earth. They'll be our version of them. Creatures designed by human hands, carrying our flaws, our decisions, and our mistakes. The real question isn't whether they can live. It's whether we deserve to create them at all. The people working on these projects insist their goal isn't to play God, but to learn from Him. To understand evolution, resilience, and extinction itself. But deep down, there's something more human, an ancient urge to defy death. To say, we can reverse what time took from us. And maybe, just maybe, to prove that humanity has finally outsmarted nature. But nature doesn't play fair. Every experiment has consequences. And as we inch closer to rewriting the past, we might discover that the past has its own way of fighting back. Because every echo we bring from extinction comes with a shadow, a reminder that some things disappeared for a reason. Somewhere in a secure underground laboratory not far from the Arctic Circle, a small heartbeat once echoed inside an incubator. It wasn't a bird, and it wasn't a reptile. It was something in between. Scientists watched in silence as the tiny creature inside the artificial egg moved. The readings were clear, its heart was functioning, its cells dividing, its temperature stable. For the first time in 66 million years, the line between ancient and modern life had been crossed. They called it Project Genesis. Publicly, it was described as a study in avian evolution. Privately, it was the first step toward creating a living organism inspired by the genome of a small theropod, one of the ancestors of modern birds. No one outside that facility was supposed to know. Not the government. Not the press. Not even other scientists. Because the truth was too extraordinary and too dangerous to share. The creature hatched early one morning under white fluorescent light. It was the size of a pigeon, covered in down-like feathers that shimmered faintly with iridescent colors. Its eyes, wide and alert, blinked rapidly, scanning its surroundings. It didn't roar or screech. It simply looked. In that moment, humanity had done the unthinkable. A being that should never have existed again lived. The researchers were mesmerized. Cameras rolled. Data poured in. For days, everything seemed to go perfectly. The creature ate small insects, chirped softly, even responded to sound. But then, something began to change. Its growth rate accelerated beyond projections. Its metabolism spiked. And most alarming of all, its behavior shifted from cautious curiosity to agitation, as though its instincts were waking up faster than its mind could handle. Within a week, it had tripled in size. Its feathers grew darker, thicker, patterned with reptilian scales near the wings. It began testing its enclosure walls, clawing at them with surprising strength. The team increased containment measures, strengthened the glass, adjusted the temperature. But deep down, they all felt the same unease. They had created something whose instincts didn't belong to this time. What if this was only the beginning? Word of the experiment spread quietly through the scientific community. Some called it the greatest discovery in modern history. Others called it a tragedy waiting to happen. Because once a living specimen exists, you can't simply erase it. It becomes data, proof, and temptation. Other labs, governments, and corporations begin to take notice. And suddenly, the race isn't about if we can bring dinosaurs back, but who will do it first. One of the most overlooked risks in de-extinction science is containment. You can build fences, barriers, and controlled environments, but you can't contain evolution. Once a gene exists in the world, it can replicate, mutate, spread. One escaped cell could rewrite entire ecosystems. That's why the scientists behind Project Genesis faced a terrible dilemma. Their creation was growing unpredictable. It began refusing food. It displayed signs of territorial aggression, pacing in circles, puffing its feathers, reacting violently to light. Its DNA, it turned out, had begun rewriting itself, reactivating dormant sequences the researchers didn't even know existed. Evolution had found its own way to fight back. Late one night, during a storm, the incubator facility lost power. Backup systems activated, but for 6 long minutes, containment doors were unsealed. When the team returned, the chamber was empty. Broken glass, blood, and scratches marked the walls. The creature had vanished. It wasn't large enough to survive long outside. At least, that's what the official report claimed. But in the wilderness, under the endless night sky, something moved. Something fast, feathered, and curious, a ghost of prehistory reborn in the present. If this sounds like fiction, remember, no one believed cloning was real until it was. No one believed frozen mammoths could yield usable DNA until they did. And now, the idea of a reconstructed dinosaur no longer feels like fantasy. It feels like an inevitability waiting for the right opportunity. Because when humans achieve something once, we always do it again, only bigger, faster, and with fewer restrictions. Imagine 10 years from now. A private company announces its success, a living, breathing dinosaur hybrid, engineered in a controlled habitat. Cameras capture its first steps. The world watches in awe. Investors pour billions into bioparks, educational centers, and revival programs. Dinosaurs become commodities, scientific wonders turned into attractions. But what happens when curiosity turns into profit? What happens when we start asking not should we, but how can we make more? History repeats itself, every breakthrough eventually becomes a business. And life, once a sacred mystery, becomes a product. There's another fear scientists rarely discuss publicly, the genetic contagion effect. When ancient DNA interacts with modern microbial life, it can trigger mutations. We've already seen it happen with viruses revived from permafrost. What if something similar occurs with prehistoric DNA? A harmless experiment could unleash something ancient, unpredictable, and unstoppable. That's why the debate around de-extinction has shifted from "can we bring them back" to "can we control what happens after?" Because the truth is, no matter how advanced our technology becomes, nature always finds a way to balance the scales. Every action has a counteraction. Every resurrection has a consequence. The irony is almost poetic. Humans, the species that once feared dinosaurs, now hold the power to recreate them. Yet in doing so, we might awaken the same forces that nearly wiped us out before we began. As Project Genesis was quietly shut down, all official records were erased. The scientists involved disappeared into other research groups, many bound by non-disclosure agreements. But whispers remain as sightings of feathered reptiles near the facility, infrared signatures too warm to be birds, too small to be mammals. Most of the world dismissed it as myth. But myths often begin with truth. And somewhere, deep in the frozen north, under miles of snow and silence, a sound occasionally breaks through the wind, a low, rhythmic cry that doesn't belong to any known species. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's the wind. Or maybe, it's the first echo of a world returning. The news broke quietly at first, a rumor whispered across scientific forums and leaked photos showing a feathered silhouette under laboratory light. But within days, it spread everywhere. The words were simple, yet unbelievable. They did it. They brought one back. Governments scrambled for answers. Journalists camped outside research facilities. Religious groups called it blasphemy. Environmentalists warned of disaster. But amid the noise, one truth stood still: humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. For the first time in 66 million years, Earth was no longer just the home of mankind. It was shared again, with echoes from another age. The announcement came from a small team of geneticists, a creature, the size of a dog, feathered and reptilian, successfully hatched and living in a controlled habitat. It wasn't a pure dinosaur, but it wasn't a bird either. It was something new. Something between two worlds. They named it Nova, Latin for new beginning. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. For weeks, Nova became the center of global fascination. Cameras broadcast her every movement: eating, sleeping, learning, playing. Children watched in wonder. Scientists called it a triumph of evolution. Investors saw opportunity. Humanity celebrated the impossible becoming real. But then the questions began. What happens when more are made? Who owns them? Who controls them? And most importantly, what happens if they escape? Within months, other biotech companies announced similar projects. Resurrection became the new gold rush. Laboratories promised the return of ancient creatures, not just dinosaurs, but prehistoric mammals, sea reptiles, and even insects from long-lost ecosystems. Humanity had become the creator of worlds. And for a time, it felt glorious. But glory fades fast when reality sets in. Nova grew faster than expected. Her instincts, though studied and monitored, began to outpace human understanding. She wasn't aggressive, but she wasn't tame either. Cameras recorded her staring for long stretches at reflections, at movement, at the sky, as if remembering something that had never happened. Some scientists said she was responding to genetic memory, the ancient instincts encoded in her DNA. As her species multiplied, new problems emerged. Their metabolism demanded enormous food intake. Their biology resisted vaccines and modern control. A single bite, even if harmless, could transmit microbes millions of years old. Suddenly, humanity's greatest creation started to look more like its biggest mistake. The government intervened. De-extinction projects were halted. Nova and the few others like her were moved to a remote island, an isolated sanctuary surrounded by ocean and surveillance drones. There, under watchful eyes, they lived, free, but never truly wild. And for the first time, the world went quiet again. People began to ask not how did we do it, but why did we need to? Was it curiosity? Ego? Redemption? Or maybe it was something deeper, a longing to touch the past, to fix what time took from us. Centuries from now, historians might not remember our wars or inventions. But they will remember the moment we reached back through time and pulled life out of extinction. Because that moment changed what it means to be human. We stopped being the product of evolution and became its authors. But every author must know where to stop writing. Because if there's one lesson we've learned from the history of life on Earth, it's that nature always finds balance. It doesn't punish. It corrects. And when it does, it's never gentle. Maybe one day, dinosaurs will walk this earth again, not through science, but through evolution itself, reborn in new forms, new species, new worlds we can't even imagine. Because life always finds a way. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this entire story has been about, not power, not control, but awe. The realization that the same planet that once gave birth to giants now allows us, fragile humans, to touch the edges of creation. We are explorers, dreamers, builders, and sometimes destroyers. But even in our arrogance, we carry a strange beauty, the will to wonder. The courage to ask what if. The audacity to try. And so, as we stand on the edge of science and imagination, perhaps the greatest question isn't whether dinosaurs can come back. It's whether we can learn from the last time they were here. Because the earth doesn't belong to us, it never did. It belongs to the rhythm of life itself, to every creature that lived, died, and might live again. And maybe, somewhere far away, on a quiet island no map dares to name, a small creature looks up at the stars, its golden eyes reflecting the moon not as a monster, but as a reminder. That life never truly disappears. It only sleeps, waiting for us to listen again. So if you've made it this far into the story, take a moment to think about it. Would you walk beside a dinosaur if it meant seeing history reborn, or would you fear what we've awakened? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through science, mystery, and imagination, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to World's Echoes, where the past, present, and future all meet in one incredible story. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries are the ones that remind us how small and how powerful we truly are.